Okay,
Yep.
There we go. All right, welcome everyone to the Creative Seek for October, the shared interest group. We'll start the evening with Diana Smith, our guest speaker. Following her slideshow, Diana will be looking at and commenting on all the images our group provided. She will then ask the makers of 3 separate images to engage with her in an inquiry on the meaning of art. If other participants have questions or comments at that point, please put them into the chat. This will be followed by a short break. The second half of the evening will be your chance to share any personal image projects you have been working on and or your take on this month's creative challenge, optical art. I think it's going to be a full evening, so I'm asking that we limit our images at the second part to 4 images per person. For those who have not sent their images to Normand and me, please have your images ready to go using share screen. And I guess as kind of obvious, Normand is recording the talk tonight, and that's because we've had several requests for it to be recorded. We will then close the evening with a monthly challenge for November. So let me begin this evening by introducing Diana. She's primarily makes non-functional abstract art using mainly clay and caustic, cold wax, oil, acrylic, and various mixed media materials. Her aim is to is for the work to be accessible in price and content, thought-provoking and attractive. The subject matter and style are often inspired by the Japanese wabi-sabi aesthetic and worldview, which honors the imperfect, incomplete, humble, and handmade. The name of her maybe one day website would be Diana Smith Unfine Art, for good reason. Diana also loves to think, read, write, and talk about art. And if she spent as much time making as thinking about art, she would be very prolific. Currently, Diana is part of the Matrosen Art Pod Gallery and Studios, which involves displaying work, participating in group shows, offering workshops, and giving artist talks from time to time. So Diana, thank you very much for being willing to share your vision of art with us tonight. Over to you.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. It's been really neat having conversations with you in preparing for this. Yes. And I certainly loved the opportunity to come up with this presentation. And it was a thrill to get all your images and sort of go through them and interrogate them. That was really a fun part. So in the presentation, I went through the presentation roughly last night. It takes about 23 minutes, but that's without Kevin sort of interjecting, say, well, I didn't quite understand what you meant, or maybe there's some comment from you that you put in the chat. So it might take a little longer. Then there'll be a sneak preview of 2 of your works in my presentation. I just couldn't resist. And then when we get to your work, I've got 14 images. I've grouped them into 2s, into different genres. And I'll go through them all so everybody sort of gets an airing, but really I've queued up 7 that I'm hoping you'll talk about what is meaningful about this image to you. And by that time, I hope I've given you some kind of my opinion about what I'm talking about. Like, this is just my way of entering this subject. Yeah, so let me just share the screen. Get this up. From the beginning, there. So, I mean, the first part is going to be a lot of words. So I hope to make it not, interesting, and then we'll start having some images. And it's regarding the meaning in art. And I think, like, I get a lot of reactions to my work. Some people, it's like some of my work is dense and heavy with meaning, and people, I think, other artists get a bit defensive and say, well, mine doesn't have any meaning. And then the other response you know, as a viewer, sometimes people says, well, I don't know what that means. And they're either, they feel bad about themselves or angry as the artist. So I'm trying to make meaning, it's important to me, but make it a bit more accessible and not so mysterious. And as I was preparing this, I was reading a book, and I came across this lovely little comment. It said, Mimi cocks her head at me. The trouble with human beings, she says, is that we can describe what we do. We just can't explain why. And that is from Indians on Vacation, but by Thomas King. And it's a really good book. I would recommend it. So I just wanted to say what I mean by meaning in general. This is my sort of my worldview, and I certainly understand other people might have a different worldview, but this is where I'm coming from. So there's no intrinsic meaning, purpose, or value to our life. There's no path that is preordained. This is my belief. But the empowering thing I think about that thought is that we can make meaning. We can make our lives and our art matter to us. And where that is really brilliantly spelled out is in books by Eric Maisel. And one of the books is Coaching the Artist Within. If anybody's interested in that subject, he's a brilliant writer. He's fresh, he's clear, and inspiring, in my opinion. So I like to start anything for myself as defining a few terms. So what is art? And especially, I wish this was an in-person gathering, because then I could ask you how many of you consider the photographs you make art. Are you artists? Are you photographers? You know, I know sometimes you take a photo of the serial number on your fridge, but sometimes you make art, I'm sure. So it's like, what's the difference? And I'm not here, you know, I'm going to ask hopefully a lot of questions and not come up with answers. But so I just Googled what a few statements about what other people consider what is art. So this is Neil Hallinan. A work of art is that which asks a question which a non-art objective, such as a wall, does not. What am I? What am I communicating? I thought that was lovely, something that isn't a wall. This is Mike Mallory. Art is the intentional communication of an experience as an end in itself. And I love Wikipedia myself. Art as creativity is something humans must do by their very nature, and no other species creates art. And it's beyond utility. So you might be able to drink out of this beautiful tea bowl that you make, but besides being functional, it is art for various reasons. So I think key words about that makes art an activity, is intentional, it communicates, it involves creativity, which for me, I think is just thinking for yourself, like trying to get beyond convention and what you've been taught. And it's beyond utility.
Diane, I just wanted to comment. Somebody has said, what about we are storytellers? And so part of what you just said there about communicating, and
and that was big in the photographs. I mean, there's one that I can think of right away. It just lends itself to there's a story here. Yeah, what's the story here? So I've got two meanings of mean, if you like. So I'm just kind of going to open it up a bit. One meaning of mean, in that, what does this artwork mean? What is it about? What does it signify, convey? What's it about? So it could be place, person, thing, animal, vegetable, mineral, idea, feelings, thought, memories. It could be sensation, experience. What is it signifying to you and possibly the viewer? Is it possible for art to not signify something to someone? I mean, a lot of, you know, I'm going to come back at this in various ways, because some people think, well, my work doesn't mean anything. Well, I'm not so sure about that. So this meaning is sort of more literal, more reactive. You're responding to, as the maker, you're expressing something, even if it's something within yourself, you know, a thought you had or something you saw or whatever. And another meaning of the word, what does it mean to me as a creator or as the viewer or the receiver of the art? In other words, is it meaningful? So what is its value, its worth to me and to the world?
Mm.
And this, I think, is more inward focused, it's ethereal. And I think this is where, this is the sneak preview of one of your images. This is Jackie Mills. Is Jackie here? She doesn't have to speak right now, but I'm just, this is her image, and it's Venice balcony. Venice balcony. So what it signifies to me is age, old, there's something timeless, it signifies humanity. But then what the value is to me, because I think it's a very beautiful image and the person is old, it's a valuing of old age. And in our society, age is also, you know, you're invisible, you're ugly, that kind of thing. So I think it's the value and meaningful of an image like this is because of that. I mean, there's many other things I could say, but that's just, I thought this was a good example of that.
So you're describing how it was meaningful to you, and I guess the artist would have maybe a very different vision of
Yes,
its meaning, or someone else. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, and I'm gonna, you know, you can't control that, right? I mean, it might have completely different meaning to the person that made it, to Jackie. I mean, and one thing, I mean, the title of this is Venice Balcony, and I just think this is more about this is not about a balcony. I mean, it's a very lovely balcony, but I think it's a little bit more than a Venice balcony.
Yes, the human.
So it begs the question, can art have no meaning? If an artwork has no meaning, what is it? And sometimes to understand things, I think, well, what is the opposite of what I'm talking about? And when I thought of this, I thought, well, it's empty. I mean, there's good and bad art, you know, or art that has a lot of strengths and art that has a lot of weaknesses or whatever. But if an artwork, what is it that has no meaning? To me, it's just empty, I think. And that, you know, in Buddhism, that can be a great thing. So I'm not putting a value judgment on that, just I'm answering my own question. Can you control what others find meaning in or not? That's a rhetorical question. I don't think you can. So I was thinking, especially because Kevin, we were having a conversation about, you know, you said some people just say, well, I just make a photograph because it's beautiful. You know, it doesn't have meaning. So I thought, okay, here's an example. Think of a photograph of an iris, quite a conventional photograph, in daylight, technically proficient, in full bloom. Well, it can signify summer. It can signify the miracle of nature, things like that. And the meaningfulness of that is if it creates, like, say I look at that and I'm just so delighted to be alive and feel really good. And there's value in that. You know, you as the artist have created that you've transmitted that feeling of pleasure to me about being alive in the world. And I think that has enormous value. So even, you know, say a conventional photograph of a flower.
Yeah.
So, you know, so that's what it, you know, what it means, what it signifies, and why it might be meaningful. I know we don't have tons of time. So, I mean, any of these statements or whatever, we could have huge discussion on them, especially if you disagree. But moving along. So intention is a big thing around this subject. Is there something I want to convey as an art maker? Do I have a purpose and intent? Do I want to express meaning? Will the meaning be the same or different for the viewer and me? And I'm going to show you an example of that later. If I do intend to express meaning, how do I do this? Do I want to do it clearly, subliminally, subtly? I tend to be more on the subtle side, but you know, it doesn't hurt to think about that ahead of time. What if I have no intention? There's nothing that I want to convey. It's just intuitive. And each beholder will have their own subjective experience with more or less freedom to bring their own interpretation, depending on what the art maker offers. So some people, the maker of the art will direct you to what they want you to think about it, what it means. And I think this is where I've got a lovely example. And this is Jim Fowler at the Midway. And there's no prizes here in terms of intent or meaning, I don't think. I don't think this is subtle. It's like clear. It's like joy, thrill, happiness. And I just love how the diagonals on this, again, like it's just movement, brightness, the color. So this is just one example of where intent is totally clear. And when I look at this, it's hard not to feel the same kind of happiness and thrill. And, I think it conveys it really strongly. And the other thing I think about people in photographs, particularly, or in paintings too, it's hard when you want to say other people to have them that don't know these people. And I think this is an example, and the one before by Jackie, where it doesn't matter who the person is, the feeling is much stronger, like the joy and the thrill here, or Jackie's thoughtfulness and dignity in the person. I'm not bothered that I don't know these people, that's sort of secondary, which I think is a very strong, a strong characteristic.
Diane, I was going to ask you, you said that you tend to be more subtle in how you communicate the meaning. Can you say a little more about that?
Yeah, can I, I'm going to show you 4 pieces of my work.
Okay.
So, and hopefully you'll see how I do that, or sometimes I do it.
Okay.
So if as a viewer, and I'm like this sometimes, I'm perplexed when encountering an artwork or a photograph. So I think this is just some things we can ask ourselves. What's my first impression? Like, was it shock? Was it distaste? Was it excitement? Was it boredom? Whatever. What's your first impressions, if you can sort of try and get that? What is it? Just simply, how big is it? What's the scale? What's the color palette? What's the medium? What is it? Just a description of what's in front of your face. What feelings and thoughts does it evoke? How easily can I read, enter into, or engage with the work? How readily do I want to? There's some people that come to ArtPod. Honestly, we have 2 doors that are sort of opposite each other. Some people will come in one door and take 10 seconds to walk out the other. Like there's nothing that they want to engage with the artwork. Now, I think that's more a comment on them myself, but it's still like, how do you want to engage with this work or not? And what helps and hinders my engagement? So for instance, sometimes a title will help or hinder engagement. And sometimes an artist statement will really help me. It'll give depth to the piece. And sometimes it'll turn me right off because it's just like, oh, gobbledygook. And I don't understand what they're saying. So there's all kinds of strategies to that. But I like having a title that adds to the work, and I always read the artist statements if I'm interested in the piece. Okay, I'm just going to show you 4 pieces of mine, and which I'm trying to illustrate what I've been talking about. So the first one is where my meaning, I'm trying to put the meaning I want in it to be clear to the public. And my intention was clear-ish to me. So this is the piece. It's 14 by 14 inches. It's encaustic on clay. And actually this is, I do a little bit of photography. So this is an image transfer of a photograph onto clay, which I fire. Might add some things to it. I do some impressions. And then after all the firing's done, I'll put encaustic on it and add oil pastels and different mediums. So here you'll see at the top left, it says art school is that way. And somebody did buy this actually, and the person who bought it, he got the same meaning out of it as I did and as I meant to convey, which is that art school's over there sometimes, but sometimes when you just see something very ordinary, it can be beautiful, it can be art. It doesn't have to sort of be part of the art world or ordained by the art world, that kind of thing. And the guy that bought this, he's going to put it in his studio, which I was really thrilled about. So my intention and how he read it meshed. So an indirect meaning where there's a very clear intention. I'm just going to say briefly, I did a whole series called, this is how I met Kevin actually, Abstract the News, Art as a Strategy for Caring in the World. It's a whole series I did, and it's based on photography. It was like seeing striking, heartbreaking photographs in the newspaper day after day after day, and not wanting just to toss them into the recycling and then wait for the next day's images, but I wanted to engage and stay with the article and what it was talking about, who it was talking about, but in a way that mediated the immediate tragedy of the situation. So that's in a nutshell, and I've got a whole talk about this, but I'm just going to show you one piece from it. So this is a piece. Now you don't know, I'm going to show you the photograph. It's a brilliant photograph in a minute, but this is the abstract piece I did. And the person that bought this, I always made sure they got the photograph that I was inspired by and that I was referencing. But, you know, this is not a sad, I don't think you'll get grief from this or anything like that. It's not heartbreaking. So now I'm going to show you the photograph, and on all of them were variations on this. There was a photograph, and then I did all kinds of different work as a response to it. So I almost should give a warning about this because this won an award. It's by Véronique de Vigerie. And Norman, please correct my pronunciation. The article was Yemen, the Hidden War. It was in the Globe and Mail. So this is the toll it takes on, the war takes on the people in Yemen. So you see a little, just a baby in a onesie in the front in a plastic bag. That onesie with a little heart on. I mean, it's probably in a bale of clothes that comes from a developed country, goes to underdeveloped countries. And then in the back, you've got that toddler looking at us, looking at the person that took the photograph, looking at the child, just really, saying, how can you stand this? Anyway, but in the background, you might notice that there's just lights and things like that of the city. And that's where you can see that's where I got this piece of art from. So that's where my intention and my meaning is very clear, and I want to transmit it, but it's not necessarily obvious when you see the painting. So that's a little bit of an answer to your question, Kevin. Then
because you have a write-up about it. Part of the art display of this artwork is that you do have the write-up there of what the photo is about.
Yes.
Is that correct? So it's not just your interpretation, it's also the information. Anyway, there's a lot done with it. You've done a lot with it. Yeah.
This is one of the ones that's dense with meaning. Now, I mean, I do things that have no meaning, but this is one with the denser ones.
Right.
So then there's meaning, and I thought this was an interesting category where the meaning for me as the maker might be different than what a viewer gets from it intentionally. And I'm just going to show you an example. This is 3 foot by 3 foot. It's a wood panel, and what it is, I mean, this might be hard for you to see, but if you saw it, it's diary pages collaged onto wood, And then they're all obscured. There's a little bit of writing where the orange is. There's a little bit of writing that is all, you can't read it, but it just says there. But mostly the diary pages are empty. And then there's all these words that have, well, they're the words from the entries, but they're all cut up and then scattered and thrown on the piece. And what it says, that center piece, just like around here, this is a detail of it. And this just happened. This is one, I don't know if this happens so much in photography, but it's like a happy accident. And it says, but meaning happens. And to me, and the woman, I happened to be in the gallery when the person, I was talking to a woman, she ended up buying it. So this is what she knows, and this is what she probably responded to. What I'm sort of getting at is when you get outside of boxes, like, here's your diary, you have like an inch to write, you have to write on the 14th of February something, and then you only get so much space. But if you just let loose and be spontaneous, meaning happens, so it's inspiring. So that's the sort of the public meaning that I thought you could read from this. Still a bit subtle, not quite like At the Midway by Jim's, you have to sort of do a bit of work for this one. But I'll only tell you this. I didn't tell the person who bought it, but this is my mum's diary. And to me, it's actually less inspired, it's more sad and poignant to me that she didn't let loose more, because she certainly would have liked to. So that's where, meaning can be on all different levels and for different people, and the public and private. Then I tried to find something, this is of mine, where there's no meaning intended. It was just intuitive. It was one of those that's intuitive. And I think you'd be hard pressed. Like, it doesn't, if you really tried hard, maybe on the middle left, you could say, oh, that looks like a house. But really, it isn't I didn't intend it to mean anything, and I don't think it does meaning. So can something that signifies nothing be meaningful? So what does this signify, and how could this be considered meaningful? So to me, just playing a devil's advocate with it, even though it's of nothing, it's not about anything. It has I think when I was thinking about it, it has a softness to it. It evokes a certain feeling. And this is probably 90% of what I make, I hate. It's just horrible. But this I like. This is one of the ones that just almost comes through you. You don't plan it, so you can't even take responsibility of it. But I like the softness of it. And it signifies softness, and it evokes that feeling, and why it's meaningful. I think I can live with this, and it would I would feel good about living with it. So
you wanted me to let you know when you were at the 25-30 minute mark here, so that's where we are.
Excellent.
There's been a couple of questions. Can I read those comments? Catherine says people can get a meaningful reaction to this for sure. So the answer is yes. So looking at the previous image, and somebody, and then she's written spontaneity and intuition is in creating art is very important.
Yes.
Spontaneity and intuition.
Yeah. And I mean, personally, I think some of my best art comes when I don't have an intention. And often, as I said, you make 10 and one of them might sing and the others don't, but it's lovely how it comes. So what I thought is, thank you to the people that sent in images. Peter was the first one, and then there was a huge gap. And then I put a squeeze on Kevin, I think, to try and get some more of you to send things in, which you did. So I've got 14 here, and I'm just what I thought is I'll go through the 14, maybe say one, what's striking, what's the one thing that strikes me about this, even though you could talk I don't know if I've been in art school. I don't know if you have too. And you can talk for hours critiquing somebody's work. And I could on these, but I'm just going to, you know, we're not going to spend that much time. And then I've got 7 queued up, and we'll just see how, and I would like you to talk about what's meaningful about this image to you. And, you know, we'll see where we get. And if other people have comments on it, maybe they can put it in the chat. I don't know if you're used to using the chat here. So, so there was, I put them into genres, if you like. So this is landscape, cityscape. So this is Peter's. And so landscape is, you know, it's horizontal, the complementary colors. One thing I love about this one is there's the moon in the background. And usually, like, I like anything that's not conventional. Like usually you have moonscapes at night and you have the sun in the day. So I love it when there's something unconventional in there. This one, the next one is Bill Cubitt, Mississauga condos. And again, it's like horizontal, but then you've got the verticals of the city, the built environment. And I love the contrast here, you know, the softness of the sky, sort of nature, with the built, the more harshness of the built environment. And of course the soft color, warm color is lovely. One thing I wanted to say about in general is about the titles. I don't know if these are the titles, if you had this in a gallery, if this is the title that you'd have, but I thought the titles could be a little bit more, this deserves a better title, I think, than Mississauga condos. In my opinion, if you don't mind.
Diana, can I interject then?
Mm-hmm.
The title, if I was to put this in a gallery, the name of those buildings on the right hand side are the Marilyn Monroe buildings.
Ah,
oh. So that's truly what the title would be. But I think for people that don't know or have me there to explain, it would be so confusing, I would think, if I titled this Marilyn Monroe buildings.
Huh. You know? Well, that gives it a whole other meaning. I mean, I of course didn't know that. I mean, and to me, it doesn't matter. It's Mississauga. I just look at the whole image, and it's a beautiful, soft, you know, it's a lovely image. So interesting. Okay, let's. This is Stephen Bann. So this is there's 4 images with people in them. Moonlight Warrior. This seems like this is created as opposed to just sort of captured. Fierce. I mean, it's certainly in your face, fierce, right? And I love the light and the dark. It's very strong on this piece, and the period, you know, the dress really situates it in time. And I paired it with this one is I think this is Jackie's again, because this is more timeless to me. Like the other one is like, yes, they want, you know, Stephen wants you to know what time it represents, a time and place or history or something like that. This one is a bit more, I think, timeless. This one by Richard James. What I like about this one is it's very colorful, but it's not like a million colors in it. It's just the one color. And it's also very realistic. It's like, you can see it, what it is, 2 people having a beer together, but it's also surreal. And this is another example when I was talking earlier about, I like, if there's photographs of people, it's really nice if you don't care who the people are for viewers. You know, if it's your grandchild, you might care very much who it is, but here, I'm not so much concerned with who they are. It's like, it's intriguing. And especially with that, why is there 1 beer there? 2 people, 1 beer. And what are they saying to each other? I mean, I love things that, you know, I want to know something. I want to know more. What is this next one? Oh yeah, so I've talked about gyms. I think I've talked about gyms enough. I'm going to go on. And then I had a category, nature. two by Anne McCarthy, who's been I love Anne's work because she's and she often has work at ArtPod. And what's striking about this, the color, I happen to love chartreuse, or that sort of lime green, and the composition. It's nice when things are not dead center, you know, they're off. And then this one, the tree at night. And again, it's like Peter's had the moon in the daytime. I love, you know, trees, you'll often see them, they're usually in daytime. I love when it's something a little different. And the negative space in this is really strong. And I think the treatment that you've done to this makes that, you know, makes that strong. This is, there were a couple I put under pattern, Liz, Conway, Dandelion, Symmetry. And I mean, obviously, it sort of it could be nature, but to me, it's the pattern that is a strong thing here. And is Liz there? Can she, one of the things I noticed, I don't know if it's true, but I thought I noticed it was a compilation of images.
Yes,
and when
it
I
is.
first,
Yeah,
and when I first loved that, am I supposed to know that it's a compilation as a viewer?
Yeah, in Creative Sig, sometimes we'll do layers. So the extra ones I did in a faded background, the original or the 4 front ones.
Great. I would, you know, maybe I don't know if this is different as a person that sort of paints, a very low tech person. I thought if they were stronger, because when I first saw it, it looked like I could see this was, you know, separate from that, like a collage. It was interesting. Anyway, it's very, very nice. And then this one, this is Jim, Memory of Stairs. And oh, I mean, you can see how strong images are without a lot of color. You know, it's just lovely. And this reminds me of Escher. Do you know Escher, the artist? He does. I mean, it's just that I just love it. I could look at that for a long time. One of the things I wanted to, I was going to say this at the end, I'll say more at the end, but at ArtPod, we've already got our program for 2023. And one of the shows we're doing is called The Great Forgery Show, tongue in cheek. And it's like doing things in the style of something. And I just thought this would be a great example, because it's not copying. It just reminds me of a different artist, but it's very reminiscent of that. Anyway, I thought that would be a great entry. Then my favorite subject is abstraction. Kahsia, Hartwell, Chicago Dressed in Plaid. And I love the title. I thought the plaidness that you picked out of this was totally appropriate. The weaving of it was beautiful. And then another abstract. This is Richard James, Psychedelic Midway. I don't know, was there a field trip to the fairground or something? But
the club showed up there.
Ah, well, you got some good work. This looked like really fun to make for sure. So again, I love it when the form and the form reinforces the content. You know, the psychedelic, the brightness, and everything about it. And this is the last two before I ask you to say something. So Jackie Mills, Mesmerizing. And when I first did see it, I don't know if the same happens to you and if you've seen these before, but it's like, whoa, my eyes just sort of vibrate with the stripes. And that's such a lovely contrast to the softness and the quietness of the horizon and the background. And then this one is by Bill. Now, I love minimalism. I mean, I try to do, I think that's lovely. Just talk about cold, shivering, and just that little spot of color on the fox, red fox in Winter Storm. It's just very, you can see how strong an image can be without a lot of stuff in it. Just great. So now I would like to ask, so I've got these queued up, and what's the time? So we got about, what, 15 minutes? So Peter, if you could just say, what's meaningful to you about this?
The story I tried to tell was Summer's End, and everybody's leaving except the poor husks of the weeds are left behind.
And I see many layers. You've got tons of layers there. What were you conveying with that?
Once again, the layers are all pointing to the right, including there's a driftwood log in black and white is the main texture layer underneath everything.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It doesn't come
Interesting.
through as strong as I hoped, but it sort of got covered up.
Yeah, but as a viewer, personally, I don't mind. I mean, I like what I see. I mean, it's intriguing because you got the very strong, I think that's Queen Anne's lace, right? That's in focus. And then you've got the more subtle and subtler, that's a word, layers after that.
Yes.
One thing, your name on the bottom left, I know some people do that. I was a tiny bit, I was a bit distracted by that name there. So does everybody who does photograph? Well, I know not everybody does because I've seen some, but what's the convention there about signing it?
I don't
There
know.
isn't
I
a
just,
convention.
Pardon?
There isn't a convention, just as there is not for artists. Some sign them, some painter artists, some sign them, some don't.
Yeah. Anyway, it's intriguing. I found this intriguing, you know, because I think because of the layers, it makes me want to, I have to stop and look at it, which is a good strategy. Thank you.
thank you.
So Anne, would you like to talk about this?
Sorry, I have to unmute here first.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. So this picture, a couple of things hit me about it. And when I took the photograph, I was really interested in the light on the bark, and I was really interested in the shadows. I don't find photographs satisfy me quite the way I want to anymore. I'm probably a frustrated painter. And so I'm wanting, yes, seriously. And so I'm doing a lot of things to put more of the human touch into something. So, and that's just my particular interest. I want to be able to feel the human hand on things. This one I did quite a while ago, and I may go back and try it again. One of the things that I like about it is the sketchiness about it and about the roughness of it. Photographs are so wonderful, and they get so perfect that I have trouble dealing with the perfection of them. So I'm not going for a particular meaning. I'm not going to put a particular story to it. I'm simply dealing with an image that makes me feel something, that attracts me, and then transforming it into something that feels even better. You know, you've talked about your process and about your meaning, but I have seen your work at ArtPod, but the thing that always hits me about your work is you just nail the composition. Even without meaning, you do a lot with composition. And the things about photographs is you start to learn good photographic, like compositional rules. And one of the things that I'm working on now is to do compositions that are more painterly, that don't follow the rules so much. So I don't know if I've answered that question.
Well, yeah, thank you for the mentioning composition, but I was going to mention the composition about yours because I love the way the tree is leaning to the right, but then all the weight of the branches is coming to the left, it's filling in the bulk of the painting. And I like the thirds and 2/3 of the, I know a lot of these things happen intuitively, but I think there is reasons why that's satisfying. How did you do all the little lines around the trunk? Was that
This is
by
in-
hand?
Yeah, so in this case, the lines around the trunk are primarily by hand, and the filling in the background is primarily by hand. I really like to be able to use my pad and the equivalent of a digital brush to modify things and to mask things so that I can pick things out. In terms of composition, though, it's a nice composition. It works. What I want to be able to do more now is compositions that I'm going to say aren't as easy. I want to try some harder compositions.
That would, yeah, be interested in what you meant by that. I'd like to see what you would an example of that. That'd be really interesting.
Leanne has said, and my first thought when I saw this was moon shadows or dancing in moonlight.
Yeah, you can certainly, the shadows are a really big part of it. And the colors that are in that tree bark are a really big part of it. In the original photograph, it's actually in a park in a volcanic crater in Hawaii, and the background is absolutely cluttered. So you can't, it was really hard to even see the structure of the tree until I started editing it out. But the bark is gorgeous. Like the bark makes you want to, it's dry, but it's a bit like arbutus, and you want to go and touch it. You want to rub your hands on that bark.
What really strikes me that this is the word that Diana used was weight, and it does it. There's a really weight heaviness to it, and how beautifully balanced that weight is.
Great, thank you. Richard, what's going on here?
Well, the title that you didn't get was Slow Drinker, ? And I deliberately masked the glass of beer out of the blue layer to get the background layer showing through. As you say, it's basically one color. It's pretty much an abstract taken at a location downtown where I've done a number of images that you can sort of do them surreptitiously, but you're always looking down on the people.
And does it matter what they're saying, or is that just a mystery? I mean, I love mystery in artwork. And what's the tone? Are they getting along? Are they not getting along? Is it intense? Is it just?
I don't know. I didn't watch them for long enough. It's a question of being there, seeing what's happening, and move on.
It's a lovely, what I notice is the textures too. The way you've done it, I'm not sure I would notice the textures so much as if you'd done it just as a straight photograph, like on the wood grain on the table and the denim jacket looks like, or hair.
The work is it's highlighting edges and then posterizing and the blue coloration. There's a comment in the chat. I think the narrative here is that she's having a quiet beer and he has just joined her looking for a date. Yes, it's possible, but I didn't see what was happening. My interpretation was, I'm done, you're not, I'm waiting. And hence my title of Slow Drinker ?
Yeah. And you could all be right? That's the thing. There's no right or wrong answer.
Yep.
It's just lovely. Thank you. Who is Kahsia, the Chicago dressed in plaid? I love the title, actually.
Thank you. I did a workshop with Sharon Tenenbaum in Chicago this past June, and she talks about the importance of titles. And I mean, I've come to realize how important they are. I did a photo for North Shore Photographic Society, and I actually came in second, even though I got the same score as the first place person. And so I emailed them and I asked them, like, how did you decide who got first and second? And they said it was title.
Huh.
And so I went, oh, wow. Well, Sharon Tenenbaum talks about titles all the time. And anyway, but that's kind of beside the point. What she has a very interesting technique that she is doing with some of her architectural photography. And I went in and changed the colors of this. And when I flipped it and did some horizontal colors, I went, wow, that's pretty cool. So it was a happy accident. But does it have meaning? I wasn't really thinking about meaning while I was doing it. But when I processed it in Photoshop, I just really liked it. And the name of the street is Whacker. I kind of like that too. And catching the train going through, I waited and waited for the train.
Oh, nice. Happy acts. I'm glad to hear that happens in photography. It certainly happens in, more low tech kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Liz Conway, would you like to talk about this one a bit more?
Basically, I was pulled toward it just because it was such an amazing pattern, like you said, in the center of these. I don't think I've ever seen it in the middle of dandelions before, unless it just dropped enough, like a star in the middle. And I just focused right in on that, trying to find an angle where it would show through. And then I started repeating it to emphasize it and also to block out some of the dark patches, like the one I put on the right. Emphasize. So yeah, I was pulled toward the pattern, like you said. And it's just that nature can have that kind of symmetry in the center of something.
Yeah, and it's, so dandelion heads are so sort of light and ethereal, and it's like I think this image is too. It's lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you. And, Stephen, a lot going on here.
So I think this is one of those situations that applies, or number 3 in your situations, where I didn't actually create this with any specific meaning, but I guess the meaning is created by the viewer. When I called in this model for a studio session, and she initially wanted, the main purpose of the session was actually to shoot some products for a commercial shoot. And then as part of the deal, we decided that I'd do some creative stuff afterwards, and I didn't really have anything specific in mind for a creative shoot, but said, hey, I have this sword that my dad gave me, and maybe we can do something fun with that. So I thought of what sort of costume elements we had on hand in the studio that would kind of go with the sword. So I had her pick out this kind of medieval-esque dress, and then I decided to get creative with the lighting, I guess. And so I had one strobe behind her, which is kind of simulating the moon. So in other shots, I actually made it more apparent that it was actually supposed to be the moon, but this one just kind of I guess a motivated light source. And there's a strip box off to her right that's kind of lighting her right side. And then another light in front just to illuminate her face just enough. But I guess more broadly, a lot of my work with female models sort of emphasizes powerful women and kind of the warrior concept in this one definitely fits in with that theme. So it is kind of an undertone that runs through a lot of my work with models is playing up the strength or this, I guess, the strong side of feminine characters. So this kind of fits that ongoing theme with my work, I guess.
Very refreshing.
Thanks.
To have strong female imagery. It's lovely. So that's what you wanted. Did you want to convey strength and power? Did you want fierceness, all that kind of thing? I mean, that sounds like an intention.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not specifically with this. That's not what I set out to create when we went into this session, but I guess that's sort of what ended up coming out of it. Just kind of a fortuitous capture, I guess. Kind of one of those nice, happy little accidents that happens between photographer and model.
Yeah, lovely. Great, thank you. And I gave Bill a darker background just to emphasize that. Bill, do you want to talk about this fox, this poor cold fox?
You're muted, Bill.
This is a fox from Yellowstone in February that our camera club went down there. Our camera club in Calgary drove down to Yellowstone, and we were in a snow vehicle, like a bus, going to Old Faithful and so on. And then when the driver said, "Hey, everyone, there's a fox who's hunting outside the field here." So almost like circus clowns coming out of a little tiny car. There seemed to be about 8 of us, with our big lenses and so on. But the beauty of this is the wind wasn't howling constantly, and people were taking shots, and plenty of shots of just the fox, normal, right? Just walking on the snow, no problem at all, nice sunny day. But I was fortunate enough to keep my lens on the fox when a good gust of wind came, and it just turned into a magical shot. And when I got back into our bus and looked at the back of the camera, I knew I had something that was really, really special. So it had quite a lot of emotion for me.
What was the emotion?
Just that I captured something that was unique. It was just a fraction of a second out of the 20 minutes that we were watching the fox. So, and you could just feel the harshness of these animals living in such a tough, February, it's minus 25, 30 degrees and so on. They're hunting for food, how difficult that must be. The coldness, the loneliness, of the animals there.
Yeah, and very counterintuitive, because for humans, or for me anyway, foxes are something you a little scared of, but this one you feel more sympathy and more concern for the animal itself.
Yeah, he's almost like these Pixar characters that you see in Disney movies and so on. Looking for the one acorn, or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen there. And I think the timing's not bad, Kevin.
Yes, perfect timing. Well done, Diana. You're amazing.
Well, that's why I said I can't think about time. So I'm glad you were there.
You nailed it. Okay.